Hey, I'm Tom,
And I'm Josh.
and this is the BlockCast.
We're Lego fans. Click.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Something completely different, something we haven't touched on. We've mentioned in episode 3. I'm very excited for it. We're going to keep them on the edge of their seats today.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
And what's going to be absolutely fantastic about this is we're going to do a callback to our first episode for those of you listeners, subscribers, and likers out there. We are going to lock in on an idea that we brought up in great abundance, and that is the fantastic, the wonderful, the 90s.
The 90s. Ooh, who remembers the 90s, everyone, with classic songs
Me, I
like.
do.
Oh, well, so do I. But yeah, we're going to kick it all the way back to the 90s because we are talking about how the 90s were not so great to Lego, but also much better for Lego by the end of it. Um, Before we get into it, speaking of seats, we have something very special that we want to talk about and tell you, but we're going to hold off. We're going to wait to the very end of the episode. So you're going to have to listen and or wait for that major reveal. Josh, is it
Or
worth the
scrub
wait?
forward. Oh,
Shh, don't
absolutely.
tell them that. They don't know
Oh,
that.
that's okay.
Don't scrub. Keep watching. But yeah, it's totally worth the wait. Hang out. We're
Wait,
going to
was No
talk about
Scrubs
it.
in the 90s? Or was that
No,
early
I
2000s?
think that was an early 2000s show.
Ah, that would have been a great segue.
Ah, true. But, well, you know. But
Hmm.
yeah, stay tuned. It'll keep you on the edge of your seat. We're also going to be talking about seats. So, with the 90s, we're going to talk about the decline of Lego. Yes, Lego did surprisingly have a decline where they didn't do very well. Now we're going to talk from the early 90s up into the very early 2000s. That's where we're going to be focusing on today. In future episodes, we're going to touch on different parts of Lego's history, but we're going to be specifically talking about how intellectual property, better known as IP, saved the Lego company. Now, in the early 90s, Lego did very well for itself. It was bigger than it was ever before, but that's what hurt it. It got too big for itself, and it started to flood its own market. It was they couldn't figure out what to do next, and that's what hurt them. Now, one of my favorite things, and Josh mentioned it in episode number 1, was that they started to expand into other genres and categories because they had pretty much had done everything that they wanted in the regular Lego environment, meaning that they had come out with city sets and adventure sets and plain regular sets. And then they started to get into Mindstorms. And Mindstorms, if you're unfamiliar, Josh, do you want to let them know a little bit more about Mindstorms?
Absolutely. So in the 90s, when the idea of what play was and how children were playing, the emergence of computer technology and robotics and different things like that started to become quite more prevalent. I don't know how many of you obsessed and begged your parents for a robo dog, but I certainly did. Never got one. Never got a robo dog. I have a real dog. He's more interesting. I like him a lot. But the robo dog I would have loved as a child because robots are awesome. And Lego wanted to capitalize on that. And they created Mindstorms, which was a really neat idea of being able to build Lego creations and then program them. You
Mm-hmm.
could program them. They had gears, they had motors, they had lights, they had sounds, and you could ultimately control your own Lego robot creation through Mindstorms and through the computer programs, which was a really, really neat idea and a really neat concept that Lego started to play with. And they also started to expand into the other market of video games. Now, through the 80s, of course, and then the early 90s, video game culture was steadily taking off. Of course, Atari and different things in the 80s was very popular, but when they branched into the home market and Sega and Nintendo started releasing home consoles and computers started having the capability of performing video games, Lego saw that as another opportunity. The idea of Lego, just as the brick, is that there's just endless possibility of what you can do. And if you could bring that world into a digital realm where there was no, in theory, limit to what the players and the users could do with the Lego brick, seemed like a really great idea.
And here's the idea, it being, remember, what we have now today in terms of plug and play. Now, we grew up in the generation of the 90s into the early 2000s as children. So we understood that computer and technology was constantly growing and changing, and that's how we just adapted. Right? Remember, this is the early 90s, and to everyone watching that might have not grown up in the 90s and a little bit later and used to USB plug-in, we're talking about setting up Lego Mindstorms in like 1992, 1993 to a computer that had to use like a 16 or 32 pin with a little screw in that you had to use for your printer. I'm not talking USB. You then had to plug it into a computer that was probably from like the early to mid 80s to run technology that was probably extremely expensive for a toy for a child in the early 90s, to then have the parent who didn't grow up on computers try to program the main block on get the toy to function. And would it properly function? Not necessarily, unless your parent was a computer engineer. So one, that toy was very expensive. Two, way ahead of its time, but too far ahead. Lego saw the future, but anticipated a market where people just weren't that computer literate, if that's the proper term of doing it. Now, granted, as a kid, I love being hands-on with my computer, but when it comes to programming a Lego Mindstorm, you had to do coding for early 90s, mid 2000, mid 90s, before they started releasing the more app friendly, program friendly Mindstorm sets. You were literally programming the code for the block to perform functions. But this also touches on the software aspect as well. They were ahead of the software market where video games were popular, but they weren't common household. Like with our generation, as Josh was saying, we grew up with where we had one of the first consoles was Sega Genesis and the Nintendo 64. Yes, we had Super Nintendo, but we're right on that brink where we came into the 64 first. We did have Super Nintendo, but we were rather young and didn't have a lot of games for that. But it's the idea that then we had PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and we were right with it. And Lego wanted to be ahead of that market too, and saw on PC the advantages of that. And Josh mentioned in episode one of my very favorite games for computer, and my computer could run it. We'll talk about that in just a sec. Was Lego Island, where you, as a kid, worked for your family who made pizzas and had to deliver pizzas. And I can't remember the villain, but you used to throw pizzas at him, and it was great. But it was very, very generic. Think of like a like a modern Lego game, right? Where you could see the outline of every single brick in detail. This thing just blurred the bricks into one giant brick blob. Like it was great when I was like 6 or 7, and I'm like, yeah, this is great. But then I got like Lego Island 2, and I think that came out in like 1998, 1999, maybe early 2000s. And I loaded that up. I was so excited to play because they gave you free form and allowed you to drive the vehicles in the game. And guess what? My computer couldn't handle it. Nope, nope, nope. So the Lego was ahead of its time. It wanted to get into software. It wanted to get into video games. It wanted to get into Mindstorms, but people didn't have the technology to keep up with it. And they spent a lot of money in product and development for it, which made sense. It was a great idea. Don't get me wrong. I played so many hours of Lego Rock Raiders. Thank goodness my computer could load that. But those load times to get those like little snippets of movies where they're trying to get the Nova crystals with my Rock Raiders, I could sit there for like a solid like 5 minutes, like I'm collecting the dial up, trying to just load something. But then I got to play. But it was ahead of its time. It cost a lot of money back in the day compared to what it does now, and they couldn't keep up with it. And they put a lot of money into it, and people were not buying it because it was expensive and it didn't work for them. It didn't meet the parameters of what their computers could keep up with. So that led to a little bit of a decline. In 1998, they posted a net loss for their stock and were in danger, not only in their new ventures, but their old ones as well, because Mega Bloks, ooh, I said a word there that I don't know if we can say with the Lego community, but Mega
You
Bloks
can
was
pluralize
actually,
that one then.
oh yeah, Mega Block, um, was becoming extremely more popular in a competitive market where Lego didn't have anything to compete because they had created all the sets that they had wanted to that didn't dilute the market because it was flooded with generices. So what did they do? For the first time in their history, a non-family member was elected to the board and then to CEO. And there was a lot of changes that came to Lego, but good ones that kept the company's mindset intact. And Josh, what was the first thing that they did?
Ba-ba-ba-bum, bum, bum, ba, ba, bum, bum. Do we have to pay for that?
Uh,
I
sh-
tried to put it off key on purpose so that it
oh,
wasn't copyright
I don't
infringement.
know if they're gonna get us for that. I don't know.
Perfect. Lego Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
released in 1999 and was a hallmark moment for the Lego company under the new leadership of their CEO. And it was the start of something that has continued through to the day, as almost everything that you can see behind me is related to some form of Lego IP, intellectual property licensed from another company's intellectual property. And the introduction of Lego Star Wars was the first major component where Lego partnered with another company. There had been other one-off or two-off, partnerships that they had with McDonald's and
I had
Shell and
those.
Exxon.
I had those
Um,
sets.
there, there
Are
are
they
some cool sets.
are they memorable?
They're very basic. It wasn't like you got a Ronald McDonald minifigure when you picked up the McDonald's set. It mostly just had the brand logo printed on the bricks, and on the bags that they came in as well.
They were very.
Um,
They were very. It was think about this because it's the idea that pre what it is today, a lot of licensing. Besides, like if you look at Disney, like not a lot of other companies participated in it. And McDonald's had the Happy Meal, so oh, people like Legos. What if we were to just create
Legos.
generices? 4 episodes in, you think I would fix it by now. Uh, People like Lego. Let's go ahead, throw a couple pieces in a bag, and throw it in with a Happy Meal toy. And literally, like it was like six or seven pieces with a McDonald character printed on it, and that's what you got. Like if you could figure out what to build with that, good luck. Um, but it was the idea that more so Lego partnered with those that were just looking for the idea of a kid's toy with something in their consumer market where they could easily pick it up and distract their kid with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, how many children do you know that actively want to go play at a Shell gas station or with an Exxon truck?
The partnerships that they had early on really did make sense. Like it didn't feasibly make sense, and I don't think they saw money in an IP partnership. I thought they thought we're strong enough as a brand that we don't need to include other brands with what we have as toy. And
And nor was there a brand that really fit their creative vision. Also,
you know,
Lego, we mentioned it in our first episode. There were a lot of great themes throughout the 90s, and there were some great stories with original characters that Lego was producing all on their own. And it wasn't just in sets, but there were comics, and with the Lego Insiders magazine, there were stories being told around these Lego ideas. But with some of the struggles that we mentioned with earlier in this episode, Mindstorms and video game properties, it wasn't quite enough. And Lego, though they weren't and they didn't, they ran the risk of becoming irrelevant in a market that was based solely or more specifically on what you could view at cinemas and in on television. So when Star Wars, when Lucasfilm partnered with Lego, it was a boon to the Lego brand, and I would argue that it Lego's inclusion of Star Wars characters at the release of Episode One is what got a whole new generation into Star Wars. I think it was a mutually beneficial partnership.
No, I absolutely agree. And it's the idea that what you wanted from the partnership is the idea that you can have original ideas, you can have original storylines, right? But there's only so much that you can grasp as a new, you can draw a new market of consumer. Now, granted, yes, I'm talking consumer, it is business at the end of the day as well, is that you want to have people enjoy Lego, but also enjoy the things that they love in addition to Lego. So when you partner something like Star Wars, and we're going to touch on other sets as well, but outside of the Star Wars universe, but with Lego, it allows that storytelling to expand where in with the 1999 release, they had sets to go with the movie so you could play along. You could modify those storylines. You could change what you wanted. You could make it the way that you wanted and add more pieces and parts to it. So if you couldn't build what you wanted to, you had pieces from your box to add to those sets. And speaking of sets, let me go ahead and pull up the initial release of the Star Wars series sets. Now, if you know Lego, you know Star Wars is now synonymous with Lego, and they've released, I think, over 800 plus sets at this point. But these are the initial beginning, before anything else that came out, the prequels, the prequels, and these were the sets that we initialized and grew up on from the get-go. Yeah, don't mind me. I have a lot of tabs open. We're going to talk a lot about a lot of different sets today. These are the initial base sets that Lego released with Star Wars and Lucasfilm. Josh, we're going to play a game. Are you ready for
Okay, I
this?
love
Are you ready
games.
for this? This is a game.
I'm very
Uh,
competitive.
Not only are we going to talk about each set, at least in somewhat detail, um, but I want to know if you had it or not. Deal?
Deal.
So, what Lego did, they partnered with Lucasfilm. They initialized, I believe, they released 12 base sets for Lego, and then it became one of the best-selling series in the Lego company ever, and it's still to this day that so many Star Wars fans are synonymous with Lego, and Lego fans are synonymous with Star Wars because they enjoyed collecting these sets. If you look at Lego sets today compared to what we were about to show you, I'd like you to focus and pay attention to the detail of these sets, and there is a reason why. The Lego company was not doing well in the mid to late 90s, and they did not do extremely well at least up until about 2003, 2004. These helped Lego get out of their slump and start to go in the direction that they needed to. This is what gave them the idea to partner with other IPs and other companies to increase their brand awareness. They also needed to figure out how to cut costs. Not only did they restructure as a company, but they had to figure out where to cut costs, and that is how many pieces they include in the sets. So I'd like you to focus your attention on detail. They were also trying to expand into an adult Lego form where they're adding more details to sets, and then completely scrapped that idea because it was not making money. Take a look at what today is. That's what they wanted back in the mid to late 90s. When you're looking at these sets, take a look at how genericized the vehicles and the things that they're building compared to what you have today. Remember, the molds are a little bit different, but it's the idea that, remember, they are going through a restructuring, repricing, and trying to rebuild themselves during this time period, and this is what helped save them. This is what we had as kids. So the first set we're talking about is Lego 7101. And what do we have here, Josh? Who do we have in this scene?
Well, we have Darth Maul and Qui-Gon Jinn.
And they're in a lightsaber duel with a weird. Josh and I talked about this before. Josh, explain to me what this is again over here.
The best I can tell, this is a representation of a Tatooine moisture evaporator. Um, maybe, maybe, I don't
I
know.
I would have never. I would have never guessed.
But here's the thing: with a child who has maybe seen these movies or maybe hasn't, it is an item in a galaxy far, far away. It's exotic looking.
It's
There's
not an ice cream
antennas.
maker.
Maybe they need ice cream because it's so hot on Tatooine with the two suns. But to a child's eye, there are distinct lines, both up and down, and this the other way, horizontally. That is, for me anyway, to answer your question, I'm all over the place. I had this set. I'm excited to talk about this set. I loved this weird little moisture evaporator thing. I don't know what it was about it. I like the antenna pieces. If you remember from episode 1, I had the Explorians. It had antennas. Apparently, antennas were something that fascinated me as a child. But this moisture evaporator, that's what I'm going to call it. You can see there's a little spout on top. That's bloop, water comes out of it. Maybe, I don't know, but I loved it.
Creativity, everybody, creativity.
And
So,
they had capes.
and
Capes
they
are
had
fun.
capes. Capes were a little bit different. That was really cool. The other thing that I wanted to mention about this, I did not have this set, or at least I don't think I had this set. Apparently, in this set, this was the first time in 20 years, I'm talking since 1979, that they created a new mold for hair. It's just like the generic hair on top. This one had to go all the way down to the shoulders. Yeah, first time in 20 years they released a new mold for hair for a Lego figure in a set. Also, he doesn't have a chair at all. Don't know what this is. Don't know what it's supposed to be. It could be a Land Cruiser. As a kid, wow, he could fly on this thing. But in reality, look at how simplistic these pieces are. There's not even like a jet on the back. Like you just have to make it fly. Or he's using the Force to make it fly.
But we also should highlight the silver plated lightsaber hilts
True.
that the set came with. So these are chrome plated little pieces. The mold of the Lego lightsaber hilt to this day is exactly the same. They are no longer plated in chrome, which is fine because as I've been playing with it, it's coming off on my thumb. So as far as longevity of play, maybe not the best, but from a displayability aspect, looks pretty darn cool.
All right, moving on. Next set. This is the set I always wanted. I didn't get it at the get-go. I found it. I can't remember where I got it, like a Marshall's or something. I did get this set. I thought this was the coolest out of all of them. I don't know why. I thought it was just neat looking. This is the hair that I was talking about. This is the generic Lego hair. As you can see, they both have the same hair set. But I thought this was like the most complete like land speeder that they could have had. I like this set. I had this set.
I also had this set. Hey Tom, do you know about swoopability?
Explain swoopability.
Swoopability is a term in the Lego community that explains the playability of vehicular sets. So something like the land speeder appeals to the interest of child with their imagination because of the way that you can easily handle it, grab it in your hand, and swoop it, literally swoop it around, making the characters go. The way that the exhaust ports on this were designed, whether intentional or not, allows for very easy access to grab it with a thumb holding the base of the land speeder and the four fingers holding on either side of that dorsal exhaust port.
The
I
detail
like
in your
Star Wars.
language. The detail in your language.
And you can make it go swoop ability.
Swoopability, everybody. All right. The one thing that bothers me about this set, the grate needs to be in the middle, but that's just me. Evenality. It was so even. I digress. Let's move on. There's no minifigure.
I don't care. I love this set. Okay.
Why?
So
It was like
you
for me,
remember?
looking at this on the shelf, I would have been like, I did not get this set. I was not interested in the set. There was like no character to play with. I wanted to fly around with a character that could get out of this thing. If they had that, I would have gotten it.
The droid starfighter is the character. In the film, these vehicles can actually bend and walk. So in this set, the wings are on hinge pieces that can bend down and they can work like legs. You can take them off and you can put them together for when it's going through space, but when it comes out and it goes into attack position, as you see it here in the image, attack position because there's lasers coming out from behind it, the wings can expand. But here's the thing about this set. Those wings weren't very sturdy, which means that when you threw it to the ground, it exploded in a spectacular fashion, just like in the films. So for those who remember in episode 1, I had a penchant for planned rapid deconstruction of my Lego sets, aka boom. Not only did this have great swoopability, but it had the boom factor. That's not a Lego term, that's a Josh term.
But rapid, what is it? RUD? RUD? For rapid deconstruction?
Rapid unplanned deconstruction.
Rapid unplanned deconstruction is a term. So look it up. It's RUD. But as you can see, and if this was a set that was to release today, and remember, these sets were not very expensive for the time period. Like these sets are like $6 to $15 at most. Like these are not expensive sets. Remember, Lego's price point on sets weren't like what they are today with brand recognition. They were going down. Josh, I don't share that opinion with this. There was not enough playability for me. Like if this was a set that was released today, it would have come 1 minifigure. 2, it would have had that rotational piece where it could have. Also, if you couldn't have told if I couldn't tell you that Josh was a Lego fan, not a Lego fan, but if I couldn't tell you that Josh was a Star Wars fan, well, welcome everyone to one of the biggest Star Wars fans out there. So
I've been sleeping for the last 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
This is my breakfast and
Josh
lunch.
is our resident Star Wars expert here at the BlockCast. I like Star Wars, but not as much as Josh does. Let's move on to the next one. I did not have this one. Would I have gotten this one? Yes. And here's my question that I've been waiting the whole episode for, the last 28 minutes. Josh, we have to be honest here. Were you a fan of Jar Jar Binks? Oh, by the way, to those that are listening, we are looking currently at Lego 7121 Naboo Swamp.
I am resisting the urge to break into the best Jar Jar impression that I possibly could do.
Please, let's hear it. I
cannot.
Okay, all right.
Nope.
Okay, we'll save that for a later episode.
The answer is yes, absolutely. I was a fan of Jar Jar. Lego Jar Jar just is something special. He's got some seriously dead eyes, which makes you question all of existence. But he
cool thing about Jar Jar, he was one of the first molded head pieces, like in a very long time, that Lego created for a minifigure. Digress.
But it was he was a favorite of me. And you know, whether that shoots my Star Wars fan credibility down or not, I don't care, because I'm a Jar Jar stan.
Okay. The cool thing about this is that I'm going to mention, we talked about it in episode 1. I did not have this set, but I did have a submarine set. This is the same seaweed from that same series from a year and a half prior. Let's see that seaweed right there. Let's talk about
another thing that I want to just briefly touch on with this set here. We see that this includes 2 battle droids. The battle droids are we've talked about the components of the Star Wars sets, how they're a little bit more simple, how they have evolved over time. The battle droids that you see here are the only Star Wars components that have not been redesigned or changed in the 25 years since they first debuted. The battle droids that we have today are the same battle droids that were included in the Naboo Swamp.
I love those, because you show them what you can do with it, Josh. What Josh
if you remember
doing,
from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the battle droids came deployed in little balls.
And you could do that with a Lego figure. That's great. I remember doing so many things with those, like popping them in vehicles and things, and they would come out. Gotta be careful, Josh. We're gonna get copyrighted here.
Oh, I'm nowhere near the same key.
All right.
Or no.
Let's move on. I had this one. We are currently looking at Lego 7128, the speeder bikes. I had this one because I love the playability of how fast you can make these things go and throw them at the wall and make them go.
And this is the first set that we're highlighting that is including the original trilogy rather than the prequels. So the speeder bikes are of course represented from the Return of the Jedi. So we are now featuring Luke Skywalker as opposed to the prequel characters that we've seen in the previous sets. So this is in that initial wave, there was representation from the original trilogy as well as from episode 1. I had this one too. What's cool about our scout trooper here that's on the bike, he's got his helmet on. He looks pretty cool with his little visor. However, his head is simply printed with the visor piece. So when you take his helmet off, he has
no mouth
or eyes.
or eyes. It's just the oh. I always found that
But
funny because there are certain stormtroopers that only had nothing sometimes, or they just had whatever the color they needed to get the eyes right. Like
yep,
they had no face under them. It was like they were a robot.
which speaks to the Emperor's soldiers, perhaps.
Moving on. I had this one. I love this one. I thought it was great. You had the ability. There was pieces. If you do take a look right here, you did have at least limited mobility in the wings themselves. The portion of the capsule could open as well. I thought this was a lot of fun. I flew this around the room with so many different things. We're currently looking at, for those listening at home, Lego 7130, the snow speeder. I thought this was great. I thought this was a bunch of fun. You had printed plates on here. There was enough detail in here. You knew what it really was. I thought this was really put together well. This one has the little eyepiece. They could see the snow speeder coming in. It had the dish. It just had so many fun components to it. I thoroughly enjoyed this one.
If I remember correctly, it also had a harpoon cable, a little winch piece that came off of the back that had like a little grappling hook on it that you could shoot out, just similar to in the movie, except it didn't shoot out. You just simply pulled it, and then you had to get it back in place. I may be misremembering it, but I don't think I am.
We now have I have a whole story for this one. We're going to get through a couple other ones because we're currently looking at Anakin. We're back in the prequels. We're looking at 7131, Anakin's pod racer. If I could tell you one thing from the prequels that was one of my favorite things, it was pod racing. I don't know why I had an obsession with it. I love that they covered so much prior to the race and then there of the race and how it functioned and how it was utilized. I thought this was fantastic. The only thing that got me for these sets were look at the detail. Like there, pardon my language or use of the word detail. There isn't enough detail, but we're talking late 90s here. This is why I mentioned before that they were going through a restructuring where they wanted to use limited pieces. It's the idea that they had to come up with a base bridge between the engines and the unit itself to connect to. So they used basic tan brick because it matched the sand at the time, which made sense. For me, even as a kid, it ruined the illusion of the pod racer. And I said, I could probably do something better than this. I did not have this one. Josh?
I did. And I did modify this one to remove the tan piece. I used just a simple 4-stud piece to hold the power couplings together, which I do take issue in terms of detail. They should be a purpley color, not orange. That's okay. I'll give it a pass. I love the pod races myself. And I did find that in taking out that structural piece there in the center, those tan bricks, it did look right, but it lost its swoopability. There was not a way as a child playing with this that I could hold both the two pods or the two engines as well as the pod itself and have a viable race. However, with that structural piece in the center, I did have that swoopability to make sure that I could have spectacular crashes.
I'm going to talk about that in just a sec. The best one. We're looking at 7140, the X-Wing fighter. Everything about this was great. I played with this so much. I love that it came with an R2D2. I loved that you could open and close the wings when you needed to go into hyperspeed. I liked that at the front, which is not highly, you can't really see it, but you had a hinge piece so you could store like little tools and things from um, the work bay. So in case you needed to go on a mission and bring your work bay with you, you could totally do that. I love the helmet. I love the helmets. I still have the helmets from these. I love this. I thought this was great. This goes on one of my top ranking with the snow speeder. I love the X-Wing fighter.
Hey, Tom,
What, Josh?
you found the one I didn't have.
Oh, you're kidding! Out of all of them, you didn't have
Out of all of them,
X-Wing?
I never had the original X-Wing.
How did you not have the X-Wing?
Fantastic question. I don't. If I had to guess, as a young child getting into Star Wars for the first time, I was introduced to George Lucas's world through the prequels. That's where my passion was. I did immediately watch and rewatch the originals constantly because I had those at home while episode 1 was still playing in theaters. However, I did not like Luke Skywalker. I'm sorry. Still don't really care for him too much. And this set wasn't a priority for me simply because it came with Luke Skywalker.
Well,
I'm sorry.
well,
I fixed it because, as you see, I do have the Rebel Engineer and Luke Skywalker now. So I did eventually get this set. I came to my senses, but it was not in my original collection.
Disappointed.
How? I'm so sorry.
How? All right. Okay, I'll give it to you. Let's see what we got left, and we'll understand why. I had this, loved it, still have all the pieces and parts, might rebuild it. We'll go back to it. All right, next one. I love this one. This was great.
Yes.
You could fly this all over the room. You had little Anakin. You had R2D2. You had that piece. This piece, I had no idea what it was. I think it's in Star Tours when you fly with. Also, if none of you are familiar with the Disney attraction called Star Tours, it's at Disneyland Park in Anaheim, California. And it's also at Disney's Hollywood Studios where they do different scenes and you fly along as though you're a tourist on a commercialized vehicle. And one of the scenes is you follow this vehicle. And it's freaking amazing because I was like, this is great. I remember playing with this with Lego. And this is the scene and set. The only concern that I have with this set, the flyability was good. You had a lot of minifigures. You had the droids. Also, if you're listening at home, it's 7141 Naboo Fighter. It's the yellow one. It had like this little tiny vehicle. Love the wheels. Thought it was great. Had no idea the playability. What was it? What was it used for? So if you know, tell me. Josh?
This is not. I don't have an answer to that one. It is not a moisture evaporator. I can tell you that. I think I consider this to be just a general maintenance thing. But I agree. The set itself.
They were like, we have these extra pieces. What if we were to put it on some wheels and just include it with the set? Oh, great idea!
Perfect. The wires in it were from the droid Starfighter, so they're just a little bit of recycling. It's like we have these printed bricks here. Let's throw them in here as a bonus.
Personally, I turned it into like a little go-kart for Anakin, so that was just what I did with it, though. So. Let's talk about. This one was good. I had this one too. I had a lot of these, surprisingly. We're looking at Lego 7150, the Fighter's Y-Wing. Oh, sorry. The TIE Fighter and the Y-Wing. This was cool because I never had those half-moon pieces before. That was really different. Also, this
golf balls.
golf ball. It does look like it honestly does look like a golf ball, everybody.
It felt like
It
a golf ball too.
it came with another droid, came with another minifigure that was also fighting Darth Vader. Darth Vader's ship was cool because I think you came in from the top rather than the front, but there was also a model that you came in from the front. It had the playability for the wings that they could go flat or they curved in. So that was also really fun because it really, as you made those sounds, as you go, you could really have some good playability with these two things as they would explode as they hit the wall or the side of your bed when you were playing as a kid. Had a lot of different pieces, but I think like in terms of like what they were very really decent on what they gave you for the initial set. And you also got a printed on piece that was different than anything that I've seen before. That printed on window for Darth Vader's ship, which I can't remember the name of it. Josh,
TIE
maybe
Interceptor.
there you go, everybody. Josh, keeping it real. I have no idea, but
TIE, of course, standing for Twin Ion Engine.
to those of you that understand, this is why we have Josh here at the BlockCast. He is the supporting researcher of anything and everything to do with not only Lego Star Wars, but also regular, just Star Wars in the non-Lego universe. I thought this was a lot of fun, especially with the Y-wing. You didn't see pieces utilized like that before, but it was different in the creativity. A lot of block, but it was still a lot of fun to play with, especially with those guns that could rotate as well. Good playability on this set. Limited piece
Yes.
compared to what you see today, but the detail was there.
And some fun Technic elements in the Y-wings. Y-wings.
Josh bringing up Technic. If you don't know, Josh wasn't the hugest fan of Technic. But look at him bringing it up. Proud of you.
It's true. It's true.
Proud of you. But yeah, this was a fun one to play with as well. You had a lot of options for flying in the Star Wars Lego universe. This one that we're currently looking at, Lego 7151, the Sith Infiltrator. We're back to the prequels again. I did not have off the back. I do remember this one because you had the little bombs that could fall off. I thought that was pretty cool while you're flying along, just drop them on things. You have that weird thing that he would fly on again from the previous set that we saw, the first one. Let me bring it back up. There it is again. They brought it back for that one. I did not have this one. I also don't know where you would put the minifigure to have him, or where you would put Darth Maul to have him fly around in this.
I believe the cockpit is in the upper hatch part of that. You can kind of see it's a very thin viewport in that one. I did have this one. I don't remember playing with it too often. It was rather blocky, so it didn't explode well. It was meaning it was well built, but it did not have a great boom factor for all of its swoopability.
It was the precursor to what we would then see and grow. As you could tell, they were getting the shape and the designs of these ships, but the designers up until this point were not designing things based off of other things. It was a lot of creative ideas. So a lot of these Lego-based inspired sets were based off of, full ships, and they're only limited to the pieces that they have. They didn't have these custom molds, so they're using what they can use. So you also have to look at it from that perspective. We can be critical, but it's also for what it was impressive. They were doing the best that they could. I love this one. We're looking at Lego 7161 Gungan Sub. I had this one. I played with this one so much. I used all of its pieces. The anchor was fun. This was another one that I put in the bathtub. I don't know why I put all my Legos in the bathtub, but
Legos.
Shoot, that's 2 for the episode, everybody. This was a fun one. Surprisingly, they gave you the Stingray over to the right, but they didn't give you the monster that originally attacked this ship. This was also another featured Star Tours section that you could actually ride in, so it was cool to see that. It had a lot of movability. These little pods that protected Jar Jar, protected Qui-Gon, and protected Obi-Wan opened, and then you also had a hatchet in the back that opened. You had a golf ball piece that we mentioned before. Don't know the official name of the piece, but that was in a clear orange, which we would then see in like the Mars sets with the little aliens that you would smash the button and they would shoot through and they would have air. It was cool. I love this one. I thought it was cool. Did you have this one?
Absolutely did.
Ah, this was also fun. You could make it fly, or you could make it like put it in the bathtub.
I will say though, I was always frustrated with this one because of that tail that it has and the way that it helixes kind of in a spiral shape. I could never get it right. And once the piece was formed into the shape that it was formed into, it stayed in that form. Um, so my helix was always a little bit wonky. It still bothers me.
We're currently looking at the last and final set. I have a story to go with this one. This is the last of the 12, I think. I think I showed 12. Lego 7171 Moss Espa Pod Race. I saw this on the shelf. I looked at this. I contemplated asking for a holiday or a birthday. And I thought to myself, you know what? I could build one better. I'm not going to lie. I sat there and turned this down because I looked at these and thought they weren't enough. When I watched this race in theaters, I thought the engines, based on what they had designed here, were way more significant. I thought, even as a kid, and this is what I thought these pod racers were kind of, not to be like whatever, but dinky. They were small, they were loose pieced. I was like, I want something that when it smashes well. So I actually took the time and built a couple of my own custom pod racers, and I had some of the pieces from other Star Wars sets, and I built my own pod. I had like 5 or 6 of them that I custom built with different engine parts and pieces, and I thought I built them better. To be very honest, I had bigger engines, I had multiple hoses coming out of them, like they were detailed, and I was like 9. So don't get me wrong, love this set, thought they did a good job, but I think just humble bragging here for a second, I thought I did a better one.
Hmm.
Josh?
Interesting. I this set I have very fond memories of, and this was one of the most advanced in terms of building techniques. We mentioned in previous episode snot, studs not on top. This is a fantastic example of that because of how the engines are built. There's a lot of unique angles. There's a lot of fun ways that they were able to get the shaping of Sebulba's pod and Gascano's engines. Anakin's, this is very much exactly the same as the individual set. So having two of Anakin's pod, I think, is a missed opportunity. However, it is nice that there was an option, for a more affordable option for someone to just pick up Anakin's or to get this full set. However, I do differ a little bit in your take on the in the details. Yes, I'm not a fan of those tan links, but as far as the engine pods go, your challenge. I want to see your pods that you build. Do you have any photos of them, or can you recreate those, Tom?
I feel like this is setting us up for a challenge
Hmm. What do
potentially.
you have in mind?
So, like, what if down the road, not necessarily next episode, at some point we get like maybe like an hour, 2 hours, we get a bucket of Lego, and whoever we will build each our own pod racer. It doesn't have to be in the Star Wars. It could be themed to whatever you want it to be, any character, any piece. Um, and then we let them vote
Hmm.
on who has
I
the better
like this
pod
idea.
racer, and we'll put it up against Lego 717. 7-1.
All right.
Good.
Let's pencil that in.
Penciled
I
in.
I will accept your challenge. I am
We're
not
gonna
quite
we're gonna build a pod
a
racer,
Tatooine native. I'm not going to put any kind of wager on this.
but this will be a good one.
Yes, looking forward to it.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the first IP that Lego would go down, and this wouldn't be the last time they would. They realized that sourcing outside was not a bad thing, and going forward, they would start to reach out to other different branches and different companies to partner with to build sets. As I mentioned before, Lego did well with IP, but they did not do well for the first couple years in terms of making all their money back. Were Lego sales strong when it came to Star Wars sets? Yes. Was it enough to support the whole company? No, because they had a lot of money floating around into theme parks, which actually didn't do well for them. Surprisingly, they thought theme parks, like other companies had, Disney had done the same. They were a movie studio. They built Disneyland and realized that they could make a little bit of extra revenue from an outside source. Lego tried the same thing, but weren't as successful running a theme park company as they were with Lego. So they hired an outside company, sold it to them, but still kept the Lego theming, and that company was
Merlin.
Merlin. And they had run other theme parks and knew what they were doing and said, we would love to keep the Lego theme and brand, but we will run your operations. So this way they got a little bit of money from that. They kept the IP chain going because it was bringing in sales. They kept going with other companies as well. So Lego, and then 2000 and subsequent years when more prequels were released, and they kept more of the prequels as well as independent sets, did really well, and it's one of the most profitable selling IPs for Lego. They expanded in 2001 to something well known as Harry Potter, if you've ever heard of it. It was their next IP. Harry Potter was huge, and it still is to this day as far as a partnership with the Lego company. They still produce sets. Granted, you had 7 movies, and you had prequels, and you had expansions of the series, so that just kept adding more and more and more because those universes are so large. We're going to cover the majority of the sets, not as in detail as we did with Star Wars, but Lego Harry Potter to this day is still quite popular. We're looking at Lego 4701. It's Harry with the sorting hat, but you had a little spinny wheel to tell you which house you were in. I had this set. I thought it was cool. I love that you could choose your house.
It's a neat set. I never had this one. I was a little late to get into the Harry Potter bandwagon. Once I did, I went full tilt boogie into it. However, since this was one of the original releases, it was not one that was made into my collection. I do think that it is fantastic that this original set ties into one of the recent releases in June of this year, which was the new Sorting Hat with the talking brick that also will help tell our Lego builders what Hogwarts house they belong in.
I love that he just has a stick. Now they actually make wands. All right, we are looking at Lego Harry Potter 4702. What is the detail of this set? I did not have this one, but it is a show
This one,
scene from Sorcerer's Stone, because that is
Quirrell, Professor Quirrell.
because if
So
he
this
lifted
was
up his
Turban.
headpiece,
Yep, it was Voldemort. It was a double-headed.
you
Um,
can't say his name.
hmm,
No, you can't say his name. You have to
I have no fear of
say,
the name.
oh, okay. But yeah, this was a show scene where the door would open. Now remember, a lot of these sets were not as detailed as they are today. We also had 4704, where he is playing Quidditch. Or no, he's flying. He's getting the key because they're going into. Oh my gosh, I've lost all of this, Josh.
So all of the original sets, at least for the most part, were that final sequence in the Sorcerer's Stone. So the previous set with Quirrell was him looking into the mirror of the Arisen, and he has the Sorcerer's Stone. It was a venticular sticker decal that was put onto the mirror piece, and you could rotate it. So in this, you can see Harry is holding the Sorcerer's Stone, but when you look at the other one, it was just the image and I believe it was actually a mirror piece, so that it would just look like a standard mirror.
Where are we here?
So this is the room of the winged keys. So he is. You can see there's actually a little tiny chessboard representing the greatest chess match that Hogwarts has ever seen. And then they move into the next room that has the keys. The keys would come out as you see in the image, so they could fly around. They had their own form of swoop ability that you simply push them through, and they would go tumbling to the ground, and Harry would fly on his broom and retrieve the one that was different, the one that was chrome plated.
This is gonna be a fun one. So I did not have this one either, but I believe we do have I can't forget. I can't remember. Oh my gosh.
So this is the potions classroom with Ron and Professor Snape. Now, if you notice in this image, there's something a little unusual about Professor Snape. So here he is in all of his sneering glory, looking a little bit gray, but when applied with some light, he glows in the dark. I have no idea why this is a thing, um, but here we are.
But that's
I'm
potions.
certain that was a first for the Lego company.
So we could take a look in this one. If you take a look, you have the three-headed dog, which would have been a custom mold. Um, and my favorite thing about this series set are these stairs. So when Lego Harry Potter came out with the first castle, and it wasn't in the original 2001 series, if I remember correctly. Can't remember. I did have the castle, but I wanted it not for the castle itself because I wanted the stair pieces because the stairs could actually crumple up into one piece or do a rotational where they actually functioned as stairs. And I thought it was amazing. I had never seen this before in Lego, and I wanted it just for the stair piece. And I put that in so many different builds. It was insane. It was great.
Yes.
I had Hagrid's hut. The cool thing about Hagrid's hut, you got a Dumbledore. Two, you got Hagrid, which was a really cool piece. Um, but the cool thing about it was his house. You could unfold his house. Now it wasn't as deep. I think they remade this. You could also see that it used the tent feature, where this was material at the top. That it wasn't actually a hard piece. That it was tent at the top. But you
Yes.
can unfold it. It wasn't as detailed interior, but I do believe they remade this, but it's way more detailed now than it used to be. But as a kid, when I had this, oh, I thought it was the coolest thing.
I think there's been 4 iterations of Hagrid's Hut that have released now.
Only four?
Oh yeah,
Only
you know how it
four.
is.
I had the Hogwarts train 4708. I had this one too. I thought it was really cool because you could lift up the roof tiles and you could see the individual things. The only thing that got me though that I did not enjoy because previous to this they did have Lego Train on metal track. They did not actually make this a functional train. They used the same. If you look at the Adventure series, kind of what I showed you in episode one, I can't remember the name of it. The vehicle that usually has the rubber tires. They just used the tires or the rims without the tires, and I was kind of disappointed in that. But they did use the magnetic coupling system for the engine and the trailing cars.
Passenger car.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool, and it was the first time I ever saw that they had a dolly, which is neat. I thought that was fun. So you can see a lot more custom molded pieces for Lego Harry Potter than we did for Star Wars, if you noticed. We're getting a lot more on prints. We're getting a lot more custom pieces. Like, take a look at the 9 3/4 sign. Like, you wouldn't have seen that before. And I don't believe that was a sticker. I think that was a printed on piece, if I remember correctly.
That I don't recall.
But you saw a lot more in terms of, like, if you look at the new, when they re-released the train, look at how much more detailed the new train is. Like, look at the little, like, they had a sticker for the roundness of the tire here. So it was the idea that you could see how this would lead to it. But for me, I love this. I thought this was the train, and I couldn't wait to play with it. This is the castle I was talking to. So it was in the original series. You had the spiral staircase in this set too. I thought this was fun. This was one of the first sets I ever displayed that I played with for a while, and then I actually displayed it when I was like 11. And it stayed on my shelf for a very long time, and the dust grew to about an inch high.
What's really cool about the entire Harry Potter line in this initial release is that each component of the castle could stack, and you could make it all one cohesive building, one cohesive castle. You can't see it so much in this one, but where you have the components, if you look at the balcony where Hermione is standing, there is a diagonal shaped brick. Um, and for those of you who have built with Lego before, that entire upper component is on just a single stud in those corners, and that was by design. So you could take that off, you could take that section of the castle away, and one of the other sets that we previously saw could potentially go on that location. So you could build up the castle with the more sets that you would collect.
First iteration of modular?
To an extent.
Yeah. Then we would have the individual classes like Josh was talking about that you could implement throughout the castle. So you'd have 4721, where Harry's looking at his family sadly in his mirror, contemplating what he was going to do. Then you also have him in potions class again, whipping something up with a blue. Oh, is this his invisibility cloak? Is that what the blue
I
is supposed to
am
symbolize?
I believe that the blue is meant to represent his invisibility cloak. But it's fun because that particular cape mold has purple stars on
Hmm. Then we have our next class. I had none of the classes. Oh, he even has the bed. That's neat. I didn't even know that. Wow, he's a really
it.
messy room. What is Ron doing? His mother would kill him.
I also
I
don't
wonder
know
what.
why his wand is a lightsaber.
It is a lightsaber. Why is his wand a blue lightsaber? It is. Look at the left. Why is it a blue lightsaber? Why is it clear?
So these particular sets, the classrooms, the Gryffindor common room, and then there was another, I believe, with Hermione that released, were an interesting take. If you notice, they are more colorful. It doesn't really match the aesthetic of the rest of the Harry Potter sets.
It reminds
These
me of
ones
like
were
Lego
marketed.
Friends.
hmm These were marketed to a younger crowd, and potentially a different um, demographic than some of the other sets. So it was a little bit more colorful, a little bit more flowery. The backdrop that you see in these sets actually came included. So it was a
Really? I was just about to
trifold.
talk about that. Is that really?
So it was a trifold little piece of cardboard that you could set up and have these as little dioramas, kind of almost exactly as it's displayed on the box, which was unique. But for my own personal taste, it didn't match the rest of the castle. It was too colorful. It didn't really match what you expect when you go to Hogwarts. So it didn't. These were a pass from me.
And Ron's hand would be chopped in half because he's holding a lightsaber.
Sure, that too.
And here is another
Ah,
iteration of that colorful theming.
yes, and this would have been the shops in Diagon Alley or Dickon and Dilly. But it's cool because you get a frog, a scorpion, a cat, an owl, a rat.
And this was
So
before
as
piecing
far
out people. The people actually played with these.
and these, I mean, there are some fantastic components included in these. I see the magic, the crystal ball in this one. There were some cool printed tiles as well as some of those neon pieces. But again, it didn't quite feel like Harry Potter to me. But what was cool with these IPs is you got to build your own universe. So if this more colorful world made sense to you, it's a world that's based on magic. So you could make it whatever you want it to be with those components. You got the characters, so you're bringing some of the magic into Lego, which could potentially have been inspiration for a whole other uh, group of Lego individuals who maybe weren't too interested in the darker colors of the castle and things of that nature.
So with Lego Harry Potter and Lego Star Wars, the reason we say Lego in front of them is that they became a universe in and of themselves. Um, Remember the reason I keep saying it over and over again that Lego was making money off of these IPs selling Lego sets, but when you have intellectual properties that you're licensing, you're paying a lot to use those licenses. Yes, Harry Potter, yes, Lucasfilm wants to utilize Lego, but they also want revenue from that Lego, and they're getting paid up front with the licensing fees. So Lego, it was the long game for them. They knew they were going to be making money in hand in partnership with them, but the money didn't come up at least within the first 3 to 4 years. It's the idea that then Lego realized that its brand is strong enough to come up with its own idea and its own IP that will then be recognized, and that became Lego Bionicle. Lego Bionicle was heavily detailed. It was, I would consider, the Technic storyline, meaning that it utilized way more Technic than any Lego stud. Actually, there was really no Lego stud included in Lego Bionicle, but Lego Bionicle was a thought through story. The characters were created, they had a connection with them. It was completely Lego. They had to pay no one except themselves. And this series set expanded more than a decade. They came up with many, 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 many different sets, and I'll run through them rather quickly, and you'll see them all. This was the original base through, and I had at least 2 or 3 of these, and I think I followed Lego Bionicle probably for the first 2 to 3 years, and then I started to fall off track. But you would have a television show that accompanied this, so you could sell more Lego in conjunction with the show, and it just worked well. And as Lego grew, not only did they expand the licensing on Star Wars and they had Harry Potter, but they also expanded into their own universe, meaning that they realized that their own intellectual property is just as important. So they started listening to the audience. They partnered with brands that they knew that would be successful. They partnered with Disney, created sets with them. So you get sets from Pixar, sets from, now that they own Lucasfilm, their original Disney characters. So you'd see Frozen, you'd see Moana, but you'd also see DC come out with different sets, and now you're seeing individualized sets. You're seeing creator sets. They realize that they just need to listen to their audience, and the audience will tell them exactly what they want to see. Lego hopped on that bandwagon right around 2004 and realized that PlayStation 2 is really, really hot and popular. Same thing with Xbox. And that's when they started to get into those Lego games, at least with the originals and the prequels and Indiana Jones. And then you would expand into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and have those games as well. And I played those for hours, and they were detailed and they worked well. And my computer and my regular Xbox could handle them.
They were fun, they were quirky, they kept the joy and the fun of Lego alive when telling stories that were sometimes a little bit darker. One of my favorite instances in the I think it was the Lego Indiana Jones game is he's in the Temple of the Golden Monkey, and instead of the Golden Monkey, it's C-3PO's head. So there was some cross promotional synergy in that as well for the other IPs that Lego has, and they only continued to grow. And there were crossovers, and there were things that you were able to do, with the different characters that you couldn't do in any other way. If you have action figures, from Hasbro, whatever the case is, they're different proportions, they're different sizes, but when you have Lego, they're the same. You have Qui-Gon and Harry Potter, and my penchant for storytelling. It, when the Star Wars ships showed up and crashed into Hogwarts, epic battles ensued, and it sparked debate. Can a lightsaber deflect spells cast from a magic wand? Are they pure energy? Are they able to be absorbed by the lightsaber? Can they be deflected? Do they simply go right through the energy beam? Is Qui-Gon going to be able to defend against Avada Kedavra? What happens? What happens? And these were the stories that you were able to tell in bringing all of these characters together, and it only expanded more. Like Tom said, there, with DC, with Marvel, with various other characters and movies and everything. And the video games too. Lego Dimensions. We hinted at that before. Lego Dimensions is a great just overall sandbox of bringing all of these components, all of these characters, and all of these properties together in a way that truly only Lego could.
Physical play in the virtual world. And that's
It,
that's 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 what's cool about it, is that Lego finally understood their direction. They had a leader who would guide them into the next decade, understanding that they could draw a crowd from different universes who like different intellectual properties, bring them into Lego and show them the other uniqueness and their own stories and their own storytelling. Lego would then go on to build their own universes in that they wouldn't flood their markets. They would understand what people would want. They would create the creator series. And that's what got them to where they are now and how big they are, is that they listened. And that's what a lot of other companies don't necessarily do as well, is that they had to understand where they were, that they were in a downturn, that they were not doing well, and they paused, they reconvened, they understood their problem and figured out how to create the solution. And that's what was beneficial, and that's what they go on their principle now and continue to keep going, is because they listen and they understand and they want to know what you want, and they grow their theme parks and they show their movies and they work with other companies politely and kindly, and they go hand in hand really well. They're a good overall company in terms of play and storytelling. And that's how IP really helped Lego get out of its funk and potentially being closed, is realizing that you don't have to just do it on your own. It's okay to ask for help sometimes, and sometimes that leads to even better storytelling. To those of you that have been patiently waiting and wondering why my voice doesn't match my face, well, one, I don't know the answer to that second question. But number one, we're about to reveal something that is completely new to this channel, and hopefully you like it. Josh is going to tell you a little bit more.
yes. So we've been talking this entire episode about intellectual property, and there is no better property that's intellectual than Tom and I. So we have done what any great Lego creator would do, and we have created sig figs of ourselves. Not only
Yeah!
that, but we have built our entire the BlockCast studio. So our followers on Instagram will have seen this already, as we were celebrating our first 100 followers.
So be sure to
However, for
follow if you wanted to get a
follow,
sneak peek
like,
on this.
and there's going to be something a little bit more special too coming up along with our little studio here. But as you can see, there's me. I am doing my little signature where Lego fans click, and Tom is just over here being all happy to be a part of it as well with his own Lego block. We talked about Star Wars, so we have Star Wars here, and we talked about Rock Raiders, Power Miner crystals, and minifigs, and that's a dinosaur. I just thought he looked cool as a mask, but we've whatever. But anyway, it's our studio.
Speaking of our studio, there's something missing with that studio.
There is
Granted,
something missing.
we're
you know what?
there.
You're right.
But you know who's not there?
Our audience isn't there, Tom.
Exactly. So you know what that means? You know what we're going to have to do? And I think this will be fun. I think we need to add our audience to our studio, but in a little bit of a different way. You know how we're going to do that? So if you haven't subscribed already, get ready for this. Every time we get a new subscriber, feel free to message us, whether it be on the comments in a video or on Instagram, and let us know that you have subscribed. We will then give you your choice of minifigures that we have available to us, and we will add you as that specific minifigure to our Studio Lego audience. Physically,
That's right.
yeah.
Think of it Think of it exactly as we were talking about physical play in a virtual world. This is the opposite of that. We are taking our virtual audience and we are turning you into physical creations that is of your own choosing, and we are going to add you to our studio audience. Which I will continue to build and expand upon as we get additional subscribers. Now, if all of this sounds confusing, it is. We're not exactly certain how it's going to work, but it's going to work. But basically, the idea behind it is we are going to give you a choice of maybe, say, 5. This is 3. We'll call it 3 minifigs. Why is Luke bald? We'll forget him. Here's Harry Potter. We'll give you a choice of a couple of minifigures. You'll choose who it is that you want. Maybe you want to be Rebel Engineer guy, and we are going to add you right into our studio audience. Then every episode, we're going to have a little segment where we feature our studio, and you'll be able to see yourself, the avatar, if you will, of your own virtual subscription, and you'll be represented here on our show with our not live studio audience.
So this is
Perfectly clear?
Yeah, I think we got it. But this is where we need you to test Josh's Lego skills on building a studio audience. Right now, I believe we have 7 subscribers, which is manageable. But I really want to see Josh's skills here. So if you could recommend, tell a friend, tell an audience member, tell your following,
Create a fake account and follow again.
to build our studio Lego audience. That'd be great. For every subscriber that we get, we will add an additional minifigure. Now, Josh said he doesn't know what he'll do if we get to 100,000, but if we get there, can you imagine what our studio audience will look like? It will take up all of Josh's brick room, and don't you want to see that, everybody? I do.
Yes, I do too. That's right.
He's going to have to buy a
We
new
have
house for
room
them.
to expand. I don't need a second bathroom. I need a studio audience.
Made of Lego. But yeah, that's what we're doing. That's the fun part. Be sure to subscribe. We hope you enjoyed today's episode all about how IP really guided Lego and saved them and redirecting their ship. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for watching. So Josh, remind them what they need to do.
Like, subscribe, watch, share, talk about, post about, and let us know your minifig.
Exactly, and you'll be added to the audience. So, as you all know, my name's Tom.
And I'm Josh.
And you have been watching the BlockCast.
Where Lego fans click.
See you next time, everybody.
Bye, all.